Hey there, it's Shauna. Welcome to your weekly astrology forecast for June 11th. This week is all about moving from captivity to adventure. And I've titled it that way because this week we have a lot of energy around self-exploration, self-discovery, and doing what it is that you want to do versus what you're supposed to do. So I'm excited to share the astrology of this week with you. And then, as always, I have 3 tips for you to make the most of this week. So first things first is we have the most interesting aspect of this week, which is Venus square Uranus. And so Venus will have just freshly moved into Leo. Venus is about social connection. It's about love, beauty, sex, and all of the things that we find pleasurable. Venus also relates to how it is that we connect with each other, how it is that we socialize, and do so in a pleasurable way. Venus is coming into an aspect with Uranus. Uranus is all about surprise elements. It's about liberation, awakening. It's about doing things differently in a way that is different from the status quo and in a way that changes a system so that you feel more free. And so with this aspect happening, it could mean a lot of different things. It could mean that you feel a desire to feel more free, that you feel a desire to change it up, that you feel a desire to do something that's either different from your status quo or that's a little bit different from what's expected from you. And this aspect, whenever I think of Venus-Uranus, it reminds me of Esther Perel's work. She wrote this book called Mating in Captivity, and it talks about how as humans in relationship, we need 2 different things. We need to have intimacy and connection and closeness, but then we also need to have separateness. We need to be our own individual in order to connect. And I think that this aspect of Venus-Uranus really reminds us that we need to have our own individuality and we need to have our own personal sense of self-expression in order to feel enlivened so that we can connect. So that is happening on Thursday this week, so we're going to be feeling that really into the entirety of this week. And then before then, we have our new moon in Gemini. And so the new moon is exact on Wednesday this week, Wednesday the 13th at 12:43 p.m. Pacific time. And it's exact at 22 degrees of Gemini. If you want to know more about what the degrees mean in astrology, you can find more about that on my other video. I'll link that below. So new moons are always this time of beginning, a time of initiation, a time of a new idea, a new inspiration, a new insight. And with this happening in the sign of Gemini, Gemini is about sharing ideas. It's about giving and receiving new information and new inspiration and doing this in a way so that you're connecting with other people. And so that you're experiencing new information constantly. People that are Gemini people that have their sun, moon, rising, even Venus or Mars in Gemini, they need a constant well of new information, new ideas, new experiences, new, different, exciting people to interact with. And so we get that tone for this particular new moon. We get that tone of like wanting to drink in new experiences, new ideas. And so it's a great time to notice what it is that you're starting around this time, what it is that feels exciting to you, something that maybe feels exciting and interesting to explore. And to set an intention to explore new things, to keep things enlivening for yourself. That also pairs really well with the Venus-Uranus energy. The other thing that's happening this week that has a bit of a more serious tone is we have Mercury opposite Saturn this week. And so Mercury is the mind, it's the thought process. Mercury is in Cancer, and it will be opposite Saturn, which is about boundaries, getting practical. Saturn is also about devotion. It's about the long-term goal. It's like, okay, give it to me straight. Give me the facts. Tell me what is real here. And so this may have, again, it's a more serious tone. And so Mercury opposite Saturn typically tells me that there's more of like a reality check around what it is that works for you, what it is that doesn't work for you. And this can have a more somber tone if what it is that's in your life doesn't work, and it feels, sometimes when Saturn is around, it can feel like we have limited options. And so this is very different than the other energy with Venus, Uranus, and the new moon in Gemini. So what I would say is it feels really important to honor what you need, what your desires are, what works for you, and where it does feel like there is a need for change. And this can be simple change, it can be more dramatic change, but the Mercury opposite Saturn really tells me that it's important to be honest about that. It's important to be real about accepting what is happening right now versus what you would like things to be. And then when you are like, okay, this is where I'm at now, you have that starting point so that you can create the change. So that is the astrology. The 3 tips that I have for you are, number 1, to do what you want this week versus what you're supposed to do. And so this, again, it may feel kind of like tricky to do because we do have Saturn involved, but the Venus-Uranus that's happening is really about doing what it is that you want, what's important to you, and what's exciting to you. Not what you should do, and I know like we all have things that we have to do, but in a certain, at a certain point, that ends. And at a certain point, you have a lot more freedom than you may realize to do what it is that you really want to do versus what's expected of you. And especially with Venus being in the sign of Leo, this is very much about like, what is it that brings you joy? What is it that helps you to appreciate yourself, to make you feel special? I want you to think about this week. What do you want to do versus what you're supposed to do? So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is to tell it like it is. And this is incorporating the Mercury opposite Saturn, because this is a very like tell it like it is kind of aspect. And that doesn't mean that you need to be harsh or that that you need to hurt someone's feelings or anything like that. But it feels important to be honest and to say what it is that needs to be said during this time. And it's an opposition, so it very well may include relationships in any different capacity. And it could be telling it like it is to yourself too, like being really honest with what you're feeling right now and what works and what doesn't work. And so that's tip number 2, to tell it like it is. And tip number 3, also Mercury Saturn, is say what you mean and mean what you say. So this week is not a time for sugarcoating things. It's not a time for wishful thinking. It's a time for being very, like following through on what it is that you say and being very clear. Again, doesn't mean that you need to be hurtful or harmful, and I think there's kind of like this delicate balance, especially if it feels like you need to draw a boundary or to say something that may rock the boat. But it's important to get really to go to the root first of what is it that you mean to say, and then how can you most clearly articulate that, again, in the way that is clear, kind but clear, kind and clear. So that's what I'll say about that for this week. Those are the 3 tips. And then I have a quote that is actually from Esther Perel's book, Mating in Captivity. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I absolutely adore her work. I think it's very unique and very much needed in a world where we're told what it is that we should do, and we have so many responsibilities and requirements, etc. So this is page 121. It's the title is On the Importance of Being Ruthless. She says, we commonly, disclosure. I think, so in this context, she's talking about romantic relationships, but I think that we could really apply this idea to life in general, not just romantic. So we commonly believe that the closer we feel to someone, the easier it will be to shed our inhibitions. But that's only half the story. Intimacy does nurture desire, but sexual pleasure also demands separateness. Erotic excitement requires that we be able to step out of the intimate bond for a moment, turn towards ourselves, and focus on our own mounting sensations. We need to be able to be momentarily selfish in order to be erotically connected. And so I love this because this is so much about this being connected with the people in our lives, but then being connected to ourselves as well as an individual. Like, what is it that excites you? Like, this is Venus, Uranus, especially Venus in Leo. And so it feels important this week to do the inner connection first and then see what comes up and then how to share that. So to wrap things all up, I'm going to pull a tarot card for us. And so this is just one last little layer of the energy for this week, so that we can know what energy to lean into. And if there's a situation or something that that is coming up for you this coming week and you want to just think about that and hold that in your heart, you can do that now while I'm shuffling. Okay, one more. Oh, interesting. Okay, so I pulled the Ace of Wands. You can see it a little. There we go, that's better. So, what a beautiful, perfect card for a week when we have a new moon. I think that's very interesting. So the suit of the wands is about passion, it's about desire, it's about the heart, which is also very appropriate for what we've talked about. And the ace is about new beginnings. It's about the very first start of something. And this card in particular is like there's a gift, there's something that's being offered, there's something that's kind of coming out of nowhere. Like the little hand is like, bing, here's a present. That's the way I look at it, this card sometimes, is something just kind of comes out of the ethers. And that's very Uranus energy, where something just comes and you're like, whoa, I had no idea that this was even a thing. So I would embrace that energy. I would embrace that, like that's kind of the vibe, is like there's something new that's starting and it may kind of feel like unexpected. And it's a time to nourish that. It's a time to pay attention to when something is coming up. And the thing with the Ace of Wands is that it is a more subtle kind of energy too, so it's not like something's going to necessarily hit you over the head. It's up to you to pay attention to it and to, like, I also like how there's the little leaves, like to nourish those little saplings that are bubbling up, metaphorically. So that is your horoscope for the week. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you did, please share it with someone who you think would enjoy it as well. And if you want to get more of me, you can find more of me on Neo Feminine TV. It's a live weekly broadcast that I do every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific time on YouTube. So we do it live. You can join the live chat, ask questions, interact with me. This week we're going to be talking about astrological signs of codependency and how you can figure out if that's something that is a tendency in your chart, in someone else's birth chart, and really how to work with that energy, because there's lots of different, just like there's different astrological signs of the empath, there's different tendencies towards the full spectrum of codependency, and how it is that we can work with that so that we have healthier relationships, so that we know ourselves better, so that we can relate better. So that will be this week, and you can find more episodes of Neo Feminine TV on neofemininetv.fireside.com. If you want to connect with me more, you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook under Neo Feminine Astrology. And then also I am doing my Astrology for Empaths course. So that's a 6-week experience that's starting this Saturday. I'm really excited about it. If you want to learn more, go to neofemininetv.fireside.com. It's an experience where we work through a lot of the things that I talk about in my work here, like body work and energy work and boundary relational work, specifically for empaths. And then it's a smaller group, so I work with you individually on your astrology chart as well. So still have some room left, and I'm really excited. If you want to join me or ask questions about it, feel free to reach out. And yeah, that's all for this week. I'm wishing you an amazing week and sending lots of love. I'll talk to you soon. Namaste.